because that's really why we hire the cold callers, is to help cut down on some time and to be that first barrier between us and the people who really don't want to sell to us. But you would be amazed the amount of people that will take the time out of their day and tell the cold caller a bunch of BS just to get you on the phone to yell at you and tell you how big of a piece of crap.
Fair enough.
Dive into the cold calling. How do you use service? Do you use VAs? How much do you pay? What type of data do you use?
So currently we were working with another group of people here inside the six-figure syndicate that was running kind of like a recruiting. They had a guy that was recruiting other people out of El Salvador. So we currently just have one caller. We were looking at getting two, but managing them is a lot harder, you know. And so we pay $3 an hour to our cold caller in El Salvador, which is dirt cheap. It's amazing. Yeah. And if you have that training background and that the time to sit there and listen to calls all day and then critique and do that, it's great. And you can build some rock stars. You know, there's a handful of people that are doing that. But what I'm finding is that my background does not really provide a ton of patience for people who need to learn at a slower pace. And because I don't have that background of teaching on a computer, like I was just explaining to my daughter, you know, that we got to hire, and it's stressful because in my background, I can hand you a shovel and know whether you're going to be a good worker within the first 30 minutes. And that's not the case with this. There is technique, there's time. It's scary getting on the phone. So if you're taking and hiring somebody who's never been on the phone before, you're asking them to do everything that you're nervous about. They're just as nervous, except for they have a boss.
So prior to using the one from El Salvador, we were using a service, and they already know what they're doing. They're already used to cold calling. It may not be real estate, maybe other stuff, but they're used to calling, you know, all the time. You give them the script that you want, and then they just roll with it. That's where our first lead came from, that first deal was from that service. They were $6 an hour plus it was expensive, $800 onboarding for their system, but we actually went off of that and went on with this one El Salvador cold caller, and they're great, but they just don't necessarily, they need more training. So we're trying to figure out our hurdle right now is how to be a better leader and how to train better. I was just listening to calls earlier and I'm like, oh, this is a train wreck, you know, like tell her to stop calling right now so we can talk about it. But so it's hard, but I mean, I think especially when you're new, if I were to go back and say, hire the El Salvador cold caller prior to hiring the service, I think I'm glad I did hire the service because they kind of already knew it was happening and they had somebody watching them and checking them and I didn't have to do anything. Yeah. So
it's almost a little bit of extra money to have that management in place.
Yeah.
I think that's when you're first starting out, that's really what you got to sit down and look at is like, what kind of money do you have versus what kind of time do you have? Because if you've got a little bit of money and all kinds of time, you know, you can make all kinds of money cold calling yourself, and it's really cheap. You know, you pull a list.
Callers can call like so many numbers a day. It's insane in comparison to what you can do on your own, which I don't even understand.
Even with a dialer.
Yeah, with a dialer.
You know, so for me, I think that when it comes down to it, I would rather spend a little bit of money and just onboard to my company, train callers. And instead of spending $3 an hour, I'm spending double that, spending the $6 an hour, but I don't have to go back and forth on training them and going and saying, well, this is why this call wasn't right, or this is why this lead wasn't actually a lead. Like today we had our caller put in a super hot lead. You know, we need to jump right on that. It's here in Vegas. She says the guy's asking 150,000 and the AR and the Zillow is 585. So in my mind, I'm like, absolutely, I need to jump on this. 150,000 is unheard of in Vegas. So, but I get on Zillow and it's already flipped. It's a brand new flip. It's listed on the market. And then you go to listen to the call, and the call is just the guy's being an ass. Like his name is Howard Johnson, and all this other stuff. And because she doesn't live here, she has no idea what he's talking about, but it's still, and we've gotten two or three of those today. And so now I've got to go back. I've got to have a Zoom with her, sit down. It's an hour's worth of time. So it's like my time, how much is my time worth? Was it worth an extra 25, $30 for the day to have somebody on board that is already qualified?
Yeah, I've heard of Filipino VAs. Like someone will say, I want $1 million, and they'll say, okay, and they'll just keep going.
Yeah.
For a house is worth 150 or 200,
Now, the one thing I will say that I have noticed, and I mean, it seems like the majority of people kind of recognize this, when you're talking about hiring a cold caller from another country, I have found that the American public tends to be a little bit more receptive to the people of Hispanic accents. I don't know whether that's anything that you found, Brandon, but
it makes sense.
maybe they're just because they're our closest neighbors, or because we all associate the Asian or Indian accent with telemarketers. I don't know, but that seems to be one of the better things, one of the little hacks that we've noticed that they do, that people seem to be a little more receptive on.